Welcome everyone to today's session. I am so thrilled to be here with Selina of Park Place Payments. This is a session that is really, really important to me. And when we met, we talked about my passion around making sure that women business owners in particular are having really candid conversations about money and how it flows in and out of your business. And you've educated me, quite frankly, on this space in some really important ways. I knew a little bit about the payment processing world, but I didn't know what a boys club it was. And I didn't know, the fact that a lot of these vendors don't necessarily align with the values that myself and our community carries. And when I learned more about your all's mission and your model, I was just so thrilled about the ways that you are supporting and uplifting women and creating jobs. And then also making sure that, we're not being taken advantage of, that we've got really, intelligent solutions that help our companies stand out and also get paid what we're really worth. So I'm just like, I'm over the moon to get to talk with you today and to hear this presentation. So thank you so much for your time, and keys to the kingdom are yours, Selina. Take this away.
Great. Well, thank you so much for that introduction. I know I have a background in book publishing as a marketing and PR executive there. And so it seems like it would be a shift, but it's not, because, I've always been about independent businesses and, building up people with like a true voice. And this is an opportunity to do that, but like it affects, some real change. And learning about the payments industry, like I literally had no idea what was happening every time I used my credit card or my debit card, or, that merchants are bearing the burden of my Chase Sapphire rewards. And, I didn't know any of this, and very few people do. And then on the flip side, most merchants think like, well, I'm just kind of stuck. It's always 3%. There's always poor customer service that's only on email. Like, so whatever, they're all the same. And the fact is, Park Place was founded because that doesn't need to be true, and it no longer is true. And so this may be an area that you've kind of like just wanted to put in the back burner and think like, oh, I'll just use whatever's here or whatever's easy. But a little knowledge can go a really, really long way. So that's why we're here today. So I'll share my screen. I have a presentation, and I am so happy to connect with everybody who is enjoying this later. Okay, so sorry, bear with me 1 second while I figure out why. Oh, I think here, sorry. This is always the challenge with sharing on Zoom, right? Can edit this part out. Okay, so here we go. I am going to present now. Okay.
Away we go.
So here we go. Okay, so I am Selina Meere, the Vice President of Marketing and Business Development at Park Place Payments. And we are a very rare women-founded, women-owned, women-run fintech in the payment processing space. And we are a fintech, but what we found is that, the technology is out there. The technology is good. The service and the experience and maybe the pricing is not, and that there's a lot that merchants and business owners can benefit from with a different type of experience. And that's what we're here to deliver, and why I'm so excited to partner with the Fearless Foundry to bring this to you today. So you probably don't even realize that you have control over your payment processor, right? You probably think like, I have no choice. This is a necessary evil. I'm just going to go with what I have, or what's obvious, or I'm going to integrate it with my software because I can, right? But you do have more control, and a little knowledge can take you a really far way. And without that knowledge, you're giving up really significant pieces of your profit and possibly significant distribution channels. And you're also really not controlling the consumer experience for your end users when they pay. So Park Place is what's called an ISO. We're a middleman, and I put that in air quotes because outside of Park Place, it literally is men. 30,000 men who are making a lot of money by practices that are like literally one step up from used car salesmen. And so this industry has kind of the worst reputation there is for salespeople. And there's a reason for that. And we found that, and we saw, like, the merchants aren't making up how horrible this experience is. It's real, it's happening, and their needs are not actually being looked out for. So there's one really, really important example of this. And this is the moment where our founder and CEO, Samantha Ettis, really saw how bad it is. She was speaking at an event for the payment processing industry and was probably the only one that didn't show up in a private jet, room full of very wealthy but very not that impressive men. And she thought, wow, like this industry needs some diversity, right? And then later in the day, there was like a real punch in the gut. So something called the Durbin Amendment was passed, and probably nobody watching this with us has ever heard of it. The Durbin Amendment was created with some really significant like movement forward in mind, but the writers of this amendment didn't understand it. So the middleman, that ISO, what Park Place is the intermediary between every single business and the credit card brand. So no business works directly with Visa, MasterCard, Amex. They all work with a middleman, okay? So the writers of the Durbin Amendment regulated Visa, MasterCard. They didn't regulate the middleman. So the middleman, this comes out while Sam is at this event, they're popping champagne. They're so psyched because they're not affected. And in fact, they can now keep even more of the profit because they have to give up less to Visa and MasterCard because they've been regulated. So that was the moment where it was like, wow, like I'm coming back, I'm disrupting this space, I'm putting women and people of color into it, and I'm going to bring it honesty and transparency. So what we found along the way in the building of the company was just not only these, questionable sales practices, but bogus fees that just will blow your mind, and also are written to really look like, oh, well, I probably need to be paying this, right? An annual fee, not necessary, literally made up. There's something called PCI compliance. And if you are not compliant, you do have to pay a fee. Okay, those are like the rules and regulations to make sure that you are doing what the card brands say you need to, and that your consumer data is protected. Okay, so if you're not compliant, you do get charged a fee. But the ISO makes money off of that fee. So they actually prefer for their clients to not be compliant. So they will not tell you, they'll not help you with the paperwork. They will want, and then on top of that, they might just add in a fee that says PCI, and that's not even a non-compliance fee. That's just PCI, and you don't know what it means, right? And you're not alone, right? Okay, if you're seeing these things on your statement, you are not alone, and the industry is functioning in order for you to keep paying these. So, you can talk to somebody about it and we can figure it out with you, and we will. Okay, so statement fees, monthly minimums, fees every time you batch, terminal and gateway fees. We have several employees that have been in the payments industry literally for decades, and they swear that the terminal and gateway fees is what paid for their holiday party. I mean, so anyway, so these are things that you're not educated on, and that's intentional. Okay. Next day funding is a really important one, right? You're all small business owners. That access to cash is crucial. Well, how much is it worth to you? And the sales agents are going to try and figure that out and then charge you for it. And in reality, you do have to pay for that, right? To make sure that the money is getting moved around that quickly, but it's actually something like $5 or $10. We've seen it up to $900 a month, like depending on how desperate a business is to get access to their money that they earned the next day. So you do need to pay for it, but you don't need to pay anything outrageous. So there's actually more to it than just that, okay? Things have changed, right? Technology has evolved. And have you been updated on that evolution? Terminals now can be really advanced and modern, but maybe you don't actually need that. Maybe you just need a really simple terminal that does simple things. what do you actually need? The expectations have always been really low, but we need service, right? If there's anything that this past year has taught us, it's that human connection is crucial in moving anything forward and keeping all of us afloat, whether personally or professionally. You need to be able to accept Google Pay and Apple Pay. You have to have a chip reader. If you have a brick and mortar location and you are swiping cards, you are responsible for fraud. Okay. If you have a chip reader where you insert and you leave it there, then the bank takes on the fraud. So that's really important. Okay. If you don't have a chip reader, you want to make sure you get one. And if you don't have a chip reader, you really don't have anyone who's, looking out and making sure that you're kept up to date. Debit is cheaper, much, much cheaper than credit cards. Even this, so there's 500 different rates that are charged by the card brands, more than that. And it starts at debit and then goes up to credit card, miles, rewards, corporate, and on and on. And so you want to make sure you're paying a fee structure that takes all of that into consideration and doesn't just charge you the highest thing, right? And you want to make sure that you're not bearing the risk of fraud. So the payment pricing models. Now, this is really interesting. Okay. And so what happens now very frequently, and this is somewhat new, is flat rate pricing. So that was invented to just, make it seem like, oh, this is easy and simple. Finally, like I understand it. I know exactly what I make every month in credit cards. So I'm going to know exactly what I owe. And that's okay, except that's actually the equivalent. Like if you walked into your favorite restaurant and literally, the glass of Chardonnay and the side of Brussels sprouts and the lobster main and the coffee afterwards all were the same price, you'd be like, this is weird. Like, why am I paying the same? That's literally what's happening here. So you're paying, lobster main prices for the Brussels sprouts because you know that they're not going to give you the Brussels sprout price on everything, right? So flat rate pricing is basically that you're leaving a lot of money on the table when you have flat rate pricing. Tiered pricing is very typical with banks and with other traditional ISOs. And there are some software companies that do this as well, some very popular ones. And that is incredibly confusing. So basically there's 3 tiers. And if you're on this, you're going to be told you're paying the lowest of the 3. But in reality, on the back end, there are all different kinds of characteristics of each transaction that lumps it into whatever pricing structure they've decided in that moment, or whichever tier they've decided in that moment. So you kind of don't really know what's going to happen, and it gets very, very expensive very quickly. And then there's interchange plus pricing. And so I mentioned that there's 500 different interchange, more than that, rates. Okay. So interchange plus is the only one that takes that into consideration. And you can kind of compare this to wholesale pricing. And it used to only be available to big box merchants like Costco or BJ's or Walmart, because it is so much more reasonable. This is what you want to be on, because you're paying that card brand's rate for that exact card, debit or credit or miles or whatever. You're paying that rate plus a small markup. And that means that you're paying actually what you as a business owes. So you may have 3 stores, and they're in kind of different neighborhoods. And one of them gets, half debit, half miles. Another gets almost, 50% Amex, and then rewards after that. So your pricing is going to look different for each of those, but you're only going to pay exactly what that consumer base looks like. And so that is really important. You're not overpaying typically with this, although you do want to make sure you understand what that plus is, what the processing fee is. And you also want to make sure that you are, modern. And are you taking contactless payments? Are you able to, kind of relate to what business, what the consumer needs right now? And are you sophisticated, right? Are you demonstrating that you are with the times with your technology? Are you demonstrating that when someone uses a debit card, they actually put in their debit rate? Because because if I pay with a debit card and I'm then asked for a signature, it's confusing to me, right? And it also means you're overpaying and I'm confused as a consumer. So you don't want that. Okay. You want to make sure that everything is speaking, to the experience that consumers having. So what are these things that everyone talks about, right? We all know cash. Oh, I don't want to take credit cards. Like it's too much. Okay, well, what does your accounts receivable look like? How often are you chasing money and not getting paid? What's getting lost in the way? Are you having trouble getting access to cash these days because it's getting harder and harder? So these are questions you want to ask yourself, like, actually, what is the real cost of taking cash and checks only for my business? And what am I leaving on the table by not being able to just, accept a credit card right away? Venmo is a peer-to-peer processing. Now, I don't know. I know they're pushing it out more and more for businesses. It is not for businesses, okay? And it is what's called a surcharging program, which means that the person paying absorbs the credit card fee if it's a credit card, but you as the business absorbs the fee if they use a debit card. And there are proper surcharging accounts that you can open so that you can have more control over that. You can have actually a better, elevated experience for your customer base. And you can show them that you're sophisticated. Like if I'm going into a business and they want Venmo, I'm thinking like, oh, well, this is a real mom and pop. Like, what is this a real business? I don't know. So you want to again think about like what is the way I'm taking payments saying to my consumer base, and do I want this to be my brand? PayPal and Square, I'm sure many of you may be using this. A lot of people who do. PayPal and Square are merchant aggregators. Okay. So what that means is that every single business that uses PayPal is in one account, and every single business that uses Square is in one account. That's why it's so easy. That's why Madeline and I and all of you can just go onto Square and get an account right now, and the dongle shows up and you don't have to do anything. Okay. So it's easy. So I get that. But imagine all of the fraudulent businesses that are doing that because they can. It's so easy. Imagine, all of the money that is pooled into one giant account that's yours, and all of that customer data and that card data. And do you want to be, kind of part of that giant aggregation? The other thing that happens is if you have an issue, you have no account with Visa, MasterCard, Amex. You're not registered with the card brands. So you have no recourse except to hope that PayPal or Square's email system will get back to you with a resolution and return that money. And I'm sure any of you who've had a chargeback through these know how difficult it is to get that money back. So it may be really easy, and it's crucial for what they've done for micro businesses being able to compete in this economy. Like, I appreciate that. I love that, flea markets and farmers markets can make more money because they can accept credit cards instead of cash. But if your business is making more than $100,000 a year in credit cards, this is not a sophisticated solution for you. And you would be much, much better off with a proper merchant account that protects you and your customers.
I was going to say real quick, Selena, I have so many friends who had what I would call like a impulse COVID late night. Maybe we had like I'll just describe my own scenario, which was like, I had a little too much wine. And then I like bought something, and it was through a PayPal transaction, and it was like an order from abroad. And, it was all linked to like an Instagram ad or something like that. And what I got, and luckily it wasn't like a wedding dress. I've seen those horror stories. It was like wildly different than what I ordered. So like, for example, I had a friend who had this happen to, where she thought she had like ordered like this cute little dish rack organizer for around the sink. And it came, and it was like for a dollhouse. Like it was like this big. Oh. And it was just completely not the product that was advertised. Right. And anybody who knows and has been in this situation is exactly as you described. We're just sending an email into the millions and millions of other emails of their fraud queue, and hoping that we're going to get some money back, but it'll take weeks, if not longer. And that's like if we get the money back.
Right. And imagine like all of the people out there that want to like pop that bubble and grab the data that's in there, and you don't want to be part of it when that happens. You want to protect yourself. And so again, like there are businesses that all of these are appropriate for. Like, I'm here to educate you on your options, and so you actually understand the solution that you've chosen. And maybe in hearing this, you're like, no, cash is right for me, or actually, no, Venmo is right for me. Okay, just understand it and know that it's right for you, and make that educated decision. Your bank, again, it feels so super easy. Banks are not credit card processors. Banks partner with a company like Park Place. So now you have two middlemen, maybe three. And so it is really expensive to process through your bank. So definitely be wary of that, and go directly to a payment processor, because you'll cut out at least one of the middlemen. So what are some of the trends that we're seeing? Obviously, contactless, huge. Surcharging, which I mentioned I'll get into, and then selling products and services online. So, I mean, I think the future of payments is like well beyond the future of payments at this point, right? Like you've got to have contactless. You just have to, especially in this post-COVID world. So just make sure that you do. And if you're going to upgrade, go through this process of like, how do I educate on what the right upgrade is for me? Selling online. So maybe you don't want to build out like this massive website. You just want to be able to take virtual transactions for something that you've posted on social, or, there are ways to do that. You can have a very simplified virtual terminal that will accept payments for your goods, and just add a pay now button to your website, or add a pay now button to your social media posts, without having to build out a big e-commerce. And we can help with that. And there's other companies like ours that can do that as well. And, think about it, maybe again, like you have billing and invoicing, and you are only allowing people to pay when you're there to pick up the phone or whatever, but they're only available to pay at 7 a.m. or 10 p.m. and you're not there. So like, you want to make sure that in your emails and on your website, that there's ways for your customers to pay when they're ready to, and they're in the middle of wanting to do that. So like I mentioned, surcharging, you can accept credit cards at zero cost, which is again gaining in popularity, because people right now want to help independent businesses thrive. And this is a way they can do it, because when we look at the savings for a business, it's astronomical. When you look at the additional fee for each transaction, it's minimal. So an individual will be willing to absorb that cost. Venmo, again, surcharges. So people have become more accustomed to it naturally with that. And then also, if they understand like what this is doing for your bottom line as a business that they support and love, and that's local, they're going to be very willing. But you have to do it right. Okay. So like, for example, again, going back to the farmer's market, they use Square, and then they're like, oh, but if you use your card, I charge you another 50 cents or $1 or whatever it is. That's not right. You actually could get shut down as a business if you surcharge incorrectly. So you want to go through the process and do it the right way. Now, as a business, if you do this, your consumers still have a choice. Okay. If they don't want to absorb this cost, they use a debit card and you pay, but it's again, minimal. And if they do want the miles or the whatever for this like really expensive interchange rate, then they absorb that cost. And a lot of people are willing to do it for, all the reasons that I explained. So this is something that you can look into, and you can do it with a virtual if you only do payments online, and you can do it bricks and mortar, either one. You know what? This has actually changed. I think it's Kansas has just approved, which I can update with Madeline, and she can let you guys know. But there are some businesses that do not, or sorry, some states that don't allow surcharging. So Park Place. So everything that I've been explaining to you and what we've learned and why I'm doing this webinar in the first place is that we are rooted in transparency and education and the right decision for you. So our process is very much what is needs analysis, service based. We want to see the full, like everything you in your price, your service, your technology, and we'll evaluate all of it. Okay. And if you are in the right position, or if you are using a software and you should stay integrated, we're going to tell you stick with what you've got. And we do that 10% of the time. And we mean it. And that payment checkup would be meaningless if we didn't do that. Me like having these educational events would be meaningless if it wasn't truly about education, and it truly is. And so if you go through this kind of audit, you'll know like either I'm in the right place or I'm not, and why, and it'll just give you real peace of mind. So at Park Place, we want to make sure that your pricing is transparent and fair, and that everything is disclosed to you up front, right? Remember, I said there is a fee for next day funding, but we're going to say like, we add everything up, the interchange rate, the mix of cards you tend to take, the fees associated with having an account like this, which there are some. It's just a matter of disclosing them to you and making sure that they're not inflated. And then we add that all up, and then we come up with your effective rate with everything lumped together. Whereas the competition is just going to kind of sell you on that rate that you're getting. I actually want to tell a really interesting rate story, which blew my mind. Okay. We got this funeral home come to us last week, and their merchant statement said they were paying like three basis points, which is like really, 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 really good. That's what it said on the top. When we did the math, they were paying 57 basis points. They were overpaying by $800 in a month because they weren't doing the math. And this ISO was saying you're getting this rate, but then they actually were charging that something completely different. I mean, believe me, we won that account hands down. Like there was no question. But like this is the kind of thing that happens. So even if you think you know, you may not know. And so that's why just going through this audit, and we do it all the time. We had an eye doctor just yesterday, and we're like, look, your technology is amazing. You gave your service a 10 and your pricing's great. Like, no, like do not touch anything. Like we do it all the time, and we do it when we should. So we do what's called a payment checkup, which I kind of mentioned. And so anyone who's interested in really changing your experience with a payment processor, having an in-house US-based customer service team that knows your name, knows your business from the day you launched to the day you close with us, which we hope is never, and is basically never, because our retention rate is insane. We have a 99% retention rate because of the way we do this. Just come to us and ask for a payment checkup, and we will find out with you if you're in the right solution. And again, like I mentioned, we look at your price, your technology, your service. We look at everything, and we come back with an evaluation on all of it. And then you decide if it makes sense to switch. And again, it'll be priced for your business on interchange plus pricing. We do not mark up any of our technology. We don't make any money on the technology that we sell. We only sell you what is right for you, and you pay. So let's take an example. Our backend processor is called Elevon, and it's a division of US Bank. Costco sells payment processing. They use Elevon, a terminal that we sell for about $450 because that's the wholesale price. Costco sells to its clients for $900. So you can see that there's a humongous range in what the ISOs are allowed to do. And we have said, well, if we're going to regulate ourselves, and we're only going to do what's right. And so we do not mark up our technology because we don't think that that's right. We don't have any contracts. Our customer service is our contract, that everyone sticks with us because of them. They check in with you every 6 to 8 weeks. You can reach them on the phone, and that they are here, in the United States. And if you and Park Place are not a fit, we say, don't do it. So I will let anyone with questions send those to Madeline or be in touch with me directly. And we will connect you with one of our account executives. Like I said, we're a female forward company. Our like 90% of our sales team is women who are doing this with complete flexibility of time to allow them an income opportunity that also takes into consideration their many, many, many other responsibilities in life, and gives them, professional training and networking and all of the skills that they need to kind of get themselves often back onto an earning path or onto a flexible one. And so what we're doing for communities is really amazing. We're boosting the bottom line of the businesses we serve, and we are putting earners back into the marketplace, which we know with the 800 billion or whatever women who've just been forced out, they need this kind of opportunity. And so we're creating just stronger economies locally.
It's
So
so amazing what you all are doing. I mean, I'm just so inspired by it. And, I talk a lot about how when women start companies, we create like what I would consider like a circular business model where it's like, how can we, with Park Place, it's like, how can we create a payments company that solves this major problem, that puts more money back in the hand of business owners, that collaborates with folks like us, that creates job opportunities for other women, and we make money in the process, but we do it in this really ethical way. And it's really exciting, it's really inspired, and I'm so grateful, Selina, for you coming by and sharing this information.
Yeah, it was really fun. I love doing it. And I love talking about this now that I know so much about it. Because like I said, I love independent businesses, and I, want to help those dreams thrive.
So one of the questions I saw that came in was around the rise of credit card fraud, and I'm sure you've seen there's that new like Vice series that's all about like fraudsters. And one of the things that I learned recently, and this question was about, is people selling credit card data on the black market, and there's just like this increase of fraud going on. And so how do you all protect consumers when it comes to credit card fraud, because it's just so rampant these days?
Absolutely. What a great question. Well, the first thing is to make sure that you have a secure merchant account of your own, right? So that you have at least like that. Okay. The second thing is every one of our clients gets something called data breach assurance. So there's a difference between fraud and data breach. Okay. So people may remember the Target case from years ago where there was a massive data breach so that all of the card data that Target had was stolen. So there weren't any fraudulent charges happening at Target at the time. I mean, there probably were, but that wasn't what the issue was. But then that card data was stolen from Target, and then the card data was probably used fraudulently in who knows how, right?
Yeah.
So now data breach happens. It happens. Okay. So the first thing we do is make sure that every single one of our solutions, whether it's virtual or physical or otherwise, has the highest level of security and encryption. That's one thing that we do. The second thing we do is offer data breach assurance, which means that if there is a data breach at your place of business, Park Place will reimburse you up to $100,000 for the damages. And then fraud, again, if you have a chip reader, the bank is going to be responsible for the fraudulent charges. If you have a swiper, you are responsible for the fraudulent charges. So to protect yourself, make sure you have a chip reader, make sure you have your own merchant account, make sure that your technology has the absolute highest level of security, fill out your PCI compliance paperwork, even though it's a pain in the butt. That's why we help with it, because it's a pain in the butt, but do it because it's important. And then also just, make sure you have your own account. And that's the best way to protect yourself.
That's so helpful. And it was, I just think it's something we've got to be so aware of, because I think it's only increased with COVID and things like that.
Absolutely. It increased with COVID. No question. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Another question, and I have lots of friends in the accounting industry, as you know. So one of the questions I saw come through is, is that right now this person says, we use QuickBooks, and if we use their merchant processor, let us have our pay now button on our invoice. So what is the hack, or how, if you're somebody who's using like an invoicing software, how could you use something like Park Place rather than that kind of payment processing option you're pushed
You're
into
pushed
by
into,
that.
sure, of course. Yeah. So there's two ways to go about it. One is that we partner with a company that offers a plugin to communicate with QuickBooks.
Okay.
The other option is decoupling,
Okay.
which is, one extra step for the accountant or the bookkeeper, but it could very well be worthwhile because it is very expensive to go through the solution you're talking about. And also I know a lot of people are a little bit frustrated by QuickBooks.
They changed all their terms recently, and it really upset a lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, go through the same process that we're going through now and say, like, why am I on QuickBooks? Am I on QuickBooks because everybody's on it, or am I on it because it's the right solution for me? And it may not be the right solution for you. And I'm not as familiar with accounting softwares as I am with payment processing, but I would say there's probably a lot of the same questions you can ask yourself and some real research and knowledge. And as a business owner, like, look, if you own a wine shop, like, you're not in it to know about, insurance and accounting and payment processing and, blah, blah, blah. So find the partners who are going to be your in-house counsel on that. And there are people like that out there. And I'm sure that, Madeline, many of them, so QuickBooks, I can tell you, we do have a plugin, or you can decouple.
Yeah.
And I don't know about all the other accounting softwares, but ask us and we can tell you, what we know. And then think about, like, you may not feel like doing the work to get off of a solution that's not right for you. But, like, for example, we've had clients come to us because they were sold on something that is just way too complex for their business. And maybe you're on something that's too complex for your business. And there's just, it's worth that little bit of, the hassle maybe to make a change to then for the long term be in the right solution for you. So I know it's really hard to make those kinds of decisions, right? We're all very kind of short term. What do we have time for right now? But you're going to optimize yourself for the long haul.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And again, it's like you look at the cost savings potentially, and it might be a little bit of like ripping off the Band-Aid to begin with, but when you look at what you'll save over the course of a year or even multiple years, it's a big difference. I know I learned that the hard way when I started operating, for sure, because again, I was just accepting the rates that were handed down from who knows where, as
Right.
opposed
And
to
many of us do. Like, comfort is the biggest barrier to change. And very few good decisions are made based on comfort.
Yeah. Well, this last question is very similar, but it's about, so big rise in e-commerce this past year. This person came through the chat and said, a lot of my clients have added an e-commerce component over the past year because of COVID and trying to pivot. What are the ways that you all work with e-commerce? Because again, I think this is, a situation where it's like, your website's going to recommend that person who they've got that back deal part. I mean, you and I know how business development works. It's like, we only integrate with Stripe because we have a partnership at play or something like that. So what are the ways that you all work, if somebody's building a site on, Squarespace or Shopify or some of these more standard platforms to step in and help?
First of all, Stripe is an absolute fortune, by far, like fortune. So if you can avoid it, I would recommend avoiding it, because again, it's another merchant aggregator and there's not a lot of service, but it's very expensive. But again, I understand why. I understand the ease. I understand that, like, the technical back end that they built, and it's genius. I'm not saying it's not genius. It's just maybe it's not right for everybody. So yes, you're right. So e-commerce platforms are not payment processors, but they do sometimes partner with or integrate with. If you're on Squarespace, there is a workaround where you can connect to Park Place. However, let's look at whether or not that is actually worth it for you. It may or may not be, but there is a workaround, and we have a developer who can help advise on that. And then if you are on Shopify, they do not play nicely with anybody, but we've seen businesses with like one or two products on Shopify. They should not be paying that. And again, that's a rip off the Band-Aid. Rebuild your site on something that is better suited for that size business. Shopify technically will let you use a payment processor that is not theirs, but then they charge you a monthly fee. So it's not going to be worth it. So we would never, ever, ever advise somebody to use us if they're on Shopify. We might, if you don't have very many products, we would say like, look at something else. There are a ton of e-commerce platforms that we can work with directly: BigCommerce, WooCommerce, 3D Cart, Sam's Cart, Magento. Like I could go on and on. So it really depends again on what. So again, the e-commerce platform itself is like the logistics, the ordering, the returns, the shipping. They are not payment processors. So it's always two separate things. It's just a matter of who are you matching up, and are they allowing you to match up with ones that they don't, have a deal with. Yeah.
And that piece is so important, right? Because I think that a lot of businesses kind of just jump into e-commerce, and then they pick
Mm-hmm.
off the shelf like whatever is like the most commonly like referenced solution. But again, if you're thinking about your business model holistically, and so if you're e-commerce, so much of your transactions are going to be cards. I mean, all of them
All of them.
ideally, all the maybe you'll accept Bitcoin. I've seen a little bit of that here and there.
Mm.
But ultimately you're going to be doing a lot of transacting, over cards. And so you've got to think about that going into that choice of not just, am I doing the easiest platform to build a site, but am I doing a site that on the back end is going to allow me to take in that card data safely and process it in a way that's really amenable and affordable for my
Yeah, and
business.
economical. And also, like, yeah, what are you doing? Are you actually like an e-commerce platform that needs a shopping cart and all of that, or are you a service provider that doesn't even need all of that, right? And so these are things to keep in mind as well. And like I said, that you can have virtual terminals and hosted payments page, where all of that, like, risk that I talked about is taken care of for you, and you're not building out some really elaborate website that's going to cost a lot of money.
Yeah. Well, this has been amazing, Selina. I learned so much. I was like taking frantic notes like the whole time.
Awesome. I love it.
Thank you so much for being willing to show up and share, and just appreciate you, and absolutely will be connecting our community further to Park Place. I'm just so excited for the work you all are doing and the way you're changing this industry.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, please reach out to me directly or through Madeline, and yeah, we'll get you going.